I have been doing rap work for a couple of years right now, and I learned through, what would I call it, baptism by fire. So having a chance to get somebody to talk to you about it, so that you get to know what it's all about, it's really a plus for the team. So kudos to the team for setting up such an opportunity. Yeah, so in essence, what we'll do today is just to give you a little bit of what is expected when you're conducting a rap study. We'll also talk about some of the components that are important, and then we'll talk about a few final tips and takeaways that are important for you to contemplate, even as you prepare for the coming sessions. Let's talk about development projects. These are projects that probably is done by an organization, a government, and it's meant to enhance people's lives. It could be a dam so that people can have water supply. It could be water for agriculture, so those are for purposes of irrigation. It could be a road. Yeah, we all need roads. Infrastructure is good. It enhances our lives. It makes it has some economic benefits to it. But one thing about development projects, they cannot be built in the air. They have to be built somewhere. And for them to be developed somewhere, it means there'll be people who are affected. They'll be affected in so many ways. One of the ways is that you can lose your land, yeah, because probably that project can only be set where your private land is. Or if you're lucky, the development project will fall within the government land, which is usually the better way. Yeah, but either way, whether it's on government land or private land, people are affected. And if people are affected, then they need to be involved. For the longest time, many projects have stalled or failed because lack of participatory approaches that needs to include the right project stakeholders, bring them at the table, share the information with them and let them know and get their feedback so that it also feeds into the development project design. Sometimes, how would I put it? Displacement can be voluntary, whereby you decide yourself you want to move, but sometimes it's involuntary. You move because you have no choice. Because this project is coming, I have to move, and that means my life has been disrupted. Yeah. Before, development projects used to be run mainly by the scientists, the engineers. I don't know whether there are any engineers here, and surveyors. And our scientists are people who don't talk much. I'm sure you've noticed them out there. When they go out to the field, the first thing they remove are maps. And what would happen is that when they remove those maps, the villagers, probably they're in a rural village, when they see maps, they know or they think, mtu nataka kunyakua ardhi yetu. So what happens? People remove their pangas and it becomes something else, yeah? Just because those villagers were not informed. They did not know what is happening, yeah? They did not understand what is happening. So the only thing is to defend, to react in a manner that they know better. So as time has passed by, people have discovered that talking about or involving what I would call the social studies and environmental studies is important. Yeah. Yeah, I know most people would call them, those are the softer studies. The hard stuff studies are the ones that are done by the scientists, the hydrologists, the guys, the surveyors and all that. But these soft studies can stall a project, and a project can even take, that was meant to take 4 years, can take even over 20 years just because of that. So most organizations have realized this, countries have realized this, and funders have realized this. And so RAP has really grown as a very important component of any study or any project that needs to be undertaken. Yeah. So yeah, so land acquisition sometimes may not require the physical relocation of people, but it still affects livelihoods of people. So how do we account for this when people's lives are affected? They can't go back to their normal life. They cannot do things the way they used to do before. Yeah. So RAP, the essence of RAP is to just make sure that there's a smooth transition. There's a smooth way to deal with the communities. There's a smooth way of having the participation within the design. Because don't forget, when a project is embraced by the community, what happens? The success rate is always high. But when they reject it, because of lack of information, that can be a worry. So RAP, in essence, is a process rather than a particular set of methods. So RAP can take, I know some people think RAP should take 1 week and it ends there. RAP can take as long as, I don't know, it can take very long sometimes because of the challenges that you get in the field, or just to make sure that everybody gets the information and everybody who needs to participate in it in terms of sharing their ideas, sharing their thoughts, and sharing their concerns are also included. So let's jump into RAP, what RAP is all about. Of course, today we are just touching on bits on what it's all about. In the next sessions, we'll delve deeper into it so that we understand better. So a RAP must identify all persons affected by the project. Very important, yeah? And after identifying that, that would give a justification for the resettlement, yeah? Because one important thing is that why are we resettling people? Why are people being displaced? Is there no alternative so as to minimize or avoid resettlement, yeah? And also what RAP does, it also outlines the eligibility of the criteria of the persons who will be affected, yeah? And also looks at the compensation modes. How will people be compensated for what they're losing, whether it is in terms of property or in terms of loss of livelihood or many other things that we'll get to hear about when we get to the specifics, yeah? And then RAP is about planning projects so that the donor or the funder, yeah, is actually shielded from unforeseen or exaggerated claims, yeah. I'm sure we've all dealt with, human beings are always human beings. If you come to me and I know there's pressure there, I'll try to exaggerate my claims also, yeah. But with RAP, this can be managed better so that the claims do not become too much, in fact, more expensive than even the project itself. Yeah, the construction of cost that goes into it. Of course, like any other thing, RAP also has principles. Yeah. Involuntary resettlement should be avoided if it's possible, and that's why many studies have to be done. Yeah, and the engineers sometimes have come up with even 2 or 3 options, and then with those options they narrow down to one that seems to be more viable and probably has
Mary, we have lost you. I don't know if I'm the only one who has lost her.
Yeah, we have lost her. Yeah.
Okay.
I'm not hearing anything.
Okay, let me do a call.
Hello? Can you hear me now?
Yes, yes, yes.
I'm
Yes,
sorry,
we can.
I had a connection problem. I'm so sorry for that. I'll just repeat what I'd said a few minutes ago.
Please share your screen, Mary.
Yes, I'll do that.
Okay, thanks.
Then kindly try to replace your screen.
Yes, I'm trying to.
Yeah.
Okay. Can you see it now? Hello?
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
Okay. Where did I drop off?
Yes, yes.
At this stage?
Are the principles?
One slide.
Okay, fine.
One slide.
Okay. One slide back. Okay. The previous slide, I think I touched on what RAP is and some of the things that are important to do to actually have a successful RAP. First of all, there's what we call identification of all persons who are affected by the project, and also having a justification for the need to resettle the persons who are affected. Yeah, and that means you need to consider all the other alternatives, so with the aim of minimizing or avoiding resettlement. Yeah. The RAP also comes up with eligibility criteria. Who is eligible to as affected party? Yeah, I'll give you an example. When Kenya is building their roads, the highways, I'm sure you know sometimes people encroach into wayleaves or areas that have been left out so that for further development, for road development. So when they encroach, maybe they've put up some businesses, and now Kenya wants to build its road, and the people need to move. Yeah. So sometimes these are the type of affected persons that would need to be compensated. That is sometimes. Yeah, and they would not be compensated for land. They would be compensated maybe for the structures that they put up and now needs to be destroyed because it's paving way for the road. Yeah, land they cannot be compensated for because number one, they don't own that land. Yeah, and then of course there are people where this development project touch on private land that has to be fully compensated for. Yeah, and generally to have an understanding also that one of the purposes of RAP also is to ensure that the donor is not slapped with some claims that are so exaggerated and that would make the project even more expensive, and they might want to rethink about going on with the project. So it's a very important document, a document that can be used to discuss how the project will be implemented and what are the costs that will be incurred other than the construction or the amounts that are allocated for putting up that project. There are principles of RAP. One of them is that if it's possible, let's try and avoid resettlement, especially involuntary resettlement. If it's not unavoidable, then these people must be compensated fully. Yeah, and I'll tell you why. Because there's also legal provision for that that requires that affected persons are compensated accordingly. And involuntary settlement does not always mean negative things. It could also be positive, especially for the community. Yeah, because sometimes the contractor is asked to give something back to the community, and they could develop the roads for them. They could set up a school for them. Yeah, I would give an example. There's a project I worked in Gatundu, and there was a school. It was a primary school with very poor. The schools were made of mud. The walls were made of mud, really, and the school and the dam was really going to reach very close to where the school was. They didn't need to move, but they were close. But after a lot of consideration and discussion, it was realized it's not very safe to have a school, especially primary school, next to a dam. So what the contractor did, of course, after discussion with the client as well, is that they bought land not too far away so that the kids would not have to walk long distances to get to that place. And they built an ultra-modern school for them. Oh, wow, we should see that school. It was such a beautiful school that nobody expected it to be in such a village. Yeah. In such a village. And it was so beautiful that I think the headmaster must have been transferred, because another one thought that he should run such a school that it was multi-storied, it had a dining hall, it had a staff room for the teachers, something that they didn't have. So this is some of the opportunity of improvement that the community can get. And also the affected persons can also have an opportunity to improve their own lives. So generally, there are 5 main objectives of the RAP. Yeah, it must comply with legal frameworks. We'll be able to touch on that during the sessions. There are legal frameworks within the Constitution, and also most of the funders have their own policies that touch on resettlement as well, and land acquisition. So those are things that the RAP has to take in consideration. We need to minimize impacts where possible, yeah, because probably as a planner, as the person in charge of the RAP, you can notice areas where the impact can be minimized, and you can have that discussion with the engineers or the people who are implementing, so that we can find ways so that the affected persons are not hugely affected. Another objective is to have a fair compensation for the people who are affected. And also very important that most people forget is livelihood restoration. Yeah. Whenever a project comes in, their people's livelihoods are drastically changed. If it was a mama mboga who used to sell mboga at a particular point and she has to move, yeah, she has to move because paving way for whatever development project that is coming in, wherever this woman would go, they might be need to find a way to restore her livelihood, because a project is not meant to actually leave people worse off, yeah, because that also becomes another burden to the community. And the other objective of RAP is also to have transparency and participation, yeah. And we'll talk more about public participation and the kind that is required, not the normal one. I'm sure most of us are aware of the budgetary public participation that is done in our counties. They're very interesting that the way they're done, but in RAP, you need to do a proper public participation, and you need to be transparent as much as possible for the success of the project. I remember as I mentioned earlier, when I did my first RAP, oh my goodness, I went to the field and people were using terms that I read them somewhere, but of course because I'd not done a RAP before, they were not very familiar. They were not top of mind in my mind. These are terms that we need to always make sure that we know them, and also make reference to them in our report when you're preparing the RAP report. The most important, number one, is to know what a PAP is. First time I had PAP, I thought, oh my God, what animal is this? A PAP simply means persons affected by the project. So it could be a person, it could be a household, yeah? And it could also be a whole community, and it could also be businesses in that area or organizations. The other term that is important to know is compensation and facilitation, yeah? How is the payment going to be made? Is it by cash or by kind, yeah? And what compensation needs to be done? Is it for the property lost or for the livelihood that is lost, yeah? And another important thing that to have is cutoff date. Because if you've collected your data and you leave it open after having discussion with the affected persons and you don't have a cutoff date, and I'm a PAP, for example, I might decide to develop my property further, and the next time when you want to come and compensate me, you find that I have a new house and I want compensation for for it. And yet, when you're carrying out the census, when you're collecting data on the PAPs, that was not there. Yeah. So the cutoff date is important to say that if you collected my data today, which is the 29th of August, anything that I develop thereafter will not be compensated for, and it needs to be communicated to the PAP so that they are aware and they don't do anything extra. And then there is something called disturbance cost. Because I'm being disturbed, I had no plans to move. There's a percentage that I get for that disturbance because I'll need to get transport to move my things. And other disturbances that I will incur as a result of being displaced. And there's replacement cost, the rate of compensation for loss of assets, and it's always calculated to the full replacement of the cost at market rate. Yeah. If it's something that needs to be installed, like for instance, if you had a borehole, it would need to be replaced, and you might, as well as the person who's going to install that borehole or drill that borehole, all that cost will be calculated and put together. Involuntary resettlement, we need to know what it is and how it occurs. Yeah. The importance of having informed consent. And I want to make it clear that despite the fact that you might have talked to the PAPs and they're aware of what is happening, that does not mean that they're in agreement and they will agree to everything you say. Yeah. So when conducting a RAP, I always expect both positive and negative responses, and use that to your advantage to know how to mitigate the negative effects and how to capitalize on some of the benefits that come with the project. If you see that picture in the background, you see people protesting. Yeah, that is something that we try as much as possible to avoid. Yeah, and it's avoided by doing a proper and effective RAP. Yeah, when people lack information, when people feel like as if they've been left out, or their rights are not being respected, that's what happens. But it's not to say that if you do a RAP, you might please everyone and everybody will be happy. There are cases where you would have done your best, but still, there are always a few people who get disgruntled. But there are ways to manage that, and there are mechanisms that are put in place to address grievances that are raised at community level. So one of the components is identification of the project impacts and affected population. And this can only be done once the engineers or clearly that if it's a road it's passing through, this is where it's passing through. If it's a dam, these are the boundaries of that dam. Yeah. So you'd know that everybody who is within that area will be part of the PAPs or part of the people who will be affected. Yeah. So you must identify all the affected persons in the project. Yeah. And there'll be landowners, there'll be tenants, there'll be squatters. Yeah. And there'll be also people who are just leasing land and have their crops and have grown their crops. And because of the project, the crops needs to be uprooted, pave way for the project. Yeah. So there's really a lot of consultations that needs to be done, especially at the top level, starting with the local authorities. Yeah. You need to work with the local authorities and the community leaders. Yeah. I know one thing I always do when I'm in the field is that I start right from the top. And the top for me would be at the county commissioner's office, who will introduce me to the deputy or the assistant commissioners, and the assistant commissioners will help me access the relevant chiefs and sub-chiefs, assistant chiefs. If you use that route, it becomes easier than going directly to the assistant chiefs. You might have a lot of problems penetrating that. But once you make courtesy calls to the relevant offices, then you'd have a smooth ride. The other thing that needs to happen when identifying this impact and also affected person is to conduct public participation. And this is consulting the affected persons, yeah? And when conducting this, you're supposed to call also all the local leaders, yeah? Always have meetings with the local leaders separately, and then have with the community and ensure that some of them participate. And I've found it very important most of the time to have the chiefs attending these public participations, yeah? It shows that they are aware, and you're not there illegally, so to speak, yeah? So a public participation should actually start right from the start of the project. If you start public participation early enough, the better for you. Because people have a habit of, one person would be exposed to that information or the knowledge that there's a project coming, and would spread wrong rumors to the rest of people. Trying to fix those wrong rumors might take you longer. So if you start early and going through the ladder, all the people you need to involve is very important. You also need to conduct a census. A census is once we know that we have 100 PAPs, yeah, and you can do this you can get to know from the maps that you get from the surveyors, from the lands office. You'll be able to see the different parcels of land, and those are the places where you'll actually go to a one-to-one discussion with those PAPs, get the census, get their information, what they have on their property, who are the household members, are they 10, are there any vulnerable persons living within these households who will be affected, and also taking asset inventory. And typically the effects of the impact goes beyond losing property or losing land. It could also mean that you're losing social support networks. As a woman, I would go to the river and collect my water, and it would be a short distance. But with the new project, it means that the distance will be longer for me. Yeah. So what does that mean? I'm being affected, not directly, but because I am not able to continue with my usual work. It also means sometimes these projects touch on community land or community resources like forests, woodland, or cultural sites. So these are things that we need to take consideration, and these people everybody needs to be consulted, so that you'd say that you have truly raised awareness and had a discussion with all the relevant stakeholders. So I've talked about the census. It serves 5 important functions which are interlinked. Getting basic information on the affected population, and this is one-to-one. It's not in a group. You register the affected persons by resident, locality, whether the land where they are at is under their own and attached deed, who else is living in that house, and all that. You also can get some basic socioeconomic data on the PAPs. Have a discussion around them on some of the things they might lose and what it would mean for them if they were to get compensation. You can get some rough ideas, though I know at some point the valuer will actually also do his own studies to actually evaluate what needs to be compensated for. There's also evaluation of sustainable income restoration. So that means getting to know what income streams do these households have, and what does it, and how will those income streams be affected by the project. Yeah. So this provides some baseline data that can be used later on for monitoring and evaluation once the project is implemented. Inventory of affected assets. This is almost, I think I mentioned it earlier, getting to know if you come to my land, and on my land I have a fence that will be affected. I have a borehole that will be affected. I have a stone house or a mud house, whatever, whether the structure is a formal structure or a semi-permanent structure, all that will need to be considered. Yeah. Yeah, I talked about the socioeconomic studies that needs to be done, to be collected. Actually, all these things, the sensors, the inventory, and the socioeconomic studies, getting background information on the PAPs, these you can do at the same time. Yeah, so long as you have a structured questionnaire that you can actually collect these information once when you visit the PAP. And it's a good idea to do that, because we do not want a situation where you fatigue the PAP by visiting them too many times, and they're also very busy people. Let it be you visiting them numerous times if there's an issue. If there's a concern that he calls you and says, oh, I have a problem and I need this sorted out, then you'd make that effort to make numerous visits to those particular PAPs. Of course, then later on, you need to do your analysis. You need to triangulate the data or the information that you collected from the sensors, from the inventory, the asset inventory data, and also the socioeconomic data, and you'll be able to actually have a proper indication of what the compensation is like, because you'll have the whole list of everything that is going to be affected and for which household or which individual, and perhaps even having some suggestions from the client, from the PAPs, how much they're thinking. Of course, everything, if you ask a PAP how much something is, be prepared for an exaggerated figure. That is normal, but these are things that can be discussed later. And if you use reason with them, they normally, you find a middle ground on how much some of the compensation should be. So the surveys and studies provide a basis for the informed consultation with the affected communities for a realistic livelihood restoration, compensation, and development strategies. So other components that we have in RAP is the legal framework for land acquisition and compensation. There are a whole list of laws that govern that, and we'll start with what we have, a provision that we have in our constitution. There is need for a compensation framework, and that, of course, you'll be able to draw the information from all the studies you've done, all the information you collected from the PAPs, a description of the resettlement assistance, what is needed with that resettlement. Is it, are people going to be partially displaced? Are people going to be completely displaced? And what kind of assistance would these PAPs require? And of course, not everybody requires restoration livelihood activities, but there are some who need because their livelihoods have been affected. Of course, all this leads to a detailed budget. It's usually very detailed, showing you sum up the compensation for properties. And for properties, I forgot to mention that also trees and crops are compensated for. There are government rates that can be used to actually come up with some of the costs for these items that need to be compensated. Then, of course, it's important to have an implementation schedule, because without this implementation schedule, these the RAP issues might actually fall off the cracks. Yeah, but if you put a schedule that has timelines, it is good. And it's when doing evaluation, when somebody comes to check what people paid, they'll use the RAP report that was created, and they look at the budget, and they look also into the implementation schedule. This is not to say that the RAP report that we produce is the final thing. I believe that the RAP can be a live document. Why do I say that? I say that because sometimes after all the studies have been done, it can take even a whole year or 2 years before the project starts. And we know that when time elapses, a lot of changes happens, because I don't think people can wait for you 2 years and stop their lives, and they're not sure whether the project will go on or not. Yeah, so they'll need to revise or review that RAP report that was developed and make necessary changes. And that means going through the same process all over again. Yeah, you'll be shocked that sometimes you find that even land has been sold and there's a new owner. So that means there's a new PAP that you need to deal with, and you need to remove the old one who sold his land. The other component that you need is a description of the organization responsibilities. There are responsibilities that will be given to the contractor. There are responsibilities even given to NLC, because when it comes to land matters, it's usually good practice to involve the NLC. There are some that the engineers will do. Everybody has responsibilities. Even the community itself has responsibilities that will be shown in this organizational chart that will be created. Then there's a framework for public consultation, participation, a clear plan for that consultation. Who needs to be consulted, and what kind of information would we get from that consultation? Yeah, and any other development plans. There's also need for a description of provisions for redress of grievances, and I can tell you, I can bet you, I don't think I've come across any development project, especially the bigger it is, there are always grievances. In a community, when some people are being compensated and others are not being compensated because they've not been touched, the ones who are not being compensated will always create issues sometimes, claiming that, oh, the things are being destroyed, oh, the noise is too much. So there are always grievances, and when the contractor is always is on the ground, construction is a messy thing. Yeah, they destroy fences, they destroy crops, they destroy things. So there needs to be a mechanism that needs to be prepared early enough, so that even the community knows that when I have a problem, this is the route I need to follow, so that I can get redress to it. Then there's also a framework for monitoring and evaluation and reporting. Later on, after everything has been done, every project needs monitoring and evaluation, because we need to find out what was set out to do. Has it been achieved? And if it's not been achieved, what are the learnings from it? Yeah, and what else needs to be done? And all that needs to be done before the project is commissioned and handed over. So final tips, I think I've taken less time, or maybe I rushed too fast. For RAP to happen, the number one thing to do always, yeah, if you ever want things to go right, is the consultation participation. Because the data you collect from the consultation, the information you collect from the public, the information you collect from the PAP will somehow should find its way into actually informing the design and the implementation of the project. We cannot afford to ignore other people, and yet they're part of the of that project, because they're probably hosting that project. Yeah. So consultation, participation is very key. Yeah, and it should start early to manage expectations, especially expectations of the community. And dealing with communities, we have different people with different expectations, and usually they are very high. And the earlier you start with them, you can manage these things early, and if you manage them early, the chances of having a successful project will be much higher. Planning is very key. I'm sure you've noticed that too many things to be done. Yeah. And I can tell you, a month is not enough to conduct a proper RAP. Of course, also that depends with the magnitude of the project. If it's a large project, it can take months and months. Yeah. Sometimes you get PAPs running into thousands, like even 2,000. Like, I don't know who did the RAP for SGR. That was really crazy. It was a huge one. I'm sure they must have had different planners to do the RAP activities. So pay attention to details, yeah? And that means you need to have a checklist to always tick and tick, and also form a habit of being a good record keeper. For everything you do, record it. You can record it by audio, or you record it by taking notes. Those notes will save you. That's how you collect information. Sometimes you might be out in the field scouting or doing things, and you do not plan, and probably you come across something and you get some information that is important. You note it down, and that can go a long way in actually helping with the RAP process and the entire project as well. And there's teamwork. RAP, you cannot do it alone. Some of these studies that you do, you need to actually involve enumerators or research assistants or people who can collect data that you need to train, because if you're one or two only, you cannot be everywhere, yeah? But they need a lot of close monitoring. You also need to be close and also pass through most of those properties to ensure that the data was collected correctly, and also to address some of the concerns that are being raised. So there's need for accurate costing of resettlement. This is very crucial, yeah, because if it's not accurate, it could be so much, as I said before, that it's even more expensive than the project itself, which ideally it should not. The RAP implementation schedule should synchronize with the overall project implementation. This RAP is only a component of the project, yeah. There are many other projects that are running. And so the implementation should take in consideration the other activities within the project. And then people must be provided with options regarding compensation. Yeah, you have option for example, if you're going to land, you could choose land for land option, or land for money. Yeah, so that you're paid at market rate. Or there are other ways of compensation. So these are options that you discuss with the PAPs themselves, yeah, and what resettlement assistance they'll need, yeah, and livelihood storage packages. This could be the training that some of them need because of the changes that are happening, set up their business all over again, and also because training is also part of it. It's important to know where some of these PAPs are at, so that you know how you design the packages that you're giving them. Yeah. So I think I'll stop there.
Thank you, Mary. That was quite rich, and I enjoyed the talk. I don't know whether we needed to see your face, but we really.
All right, can I close this? Then I can see my face.
But that was quite helpful. We have quite a number of people who want to ask questions. We have one or two on our chat, but just before we have them, I want to mention to us members, Mary has done a good pre-training for us. On the 9th of September, we'll be rolling out a RAP training that will be going on for 3 weeks. Every day we'll have a training for 2 hours between 4 to 6 p.m. We want to keep time. We'll start at exactly 4 and end at 6. So we'll be very comprehensive in our approach to the training. We have a number of topics that will be covered. A whole topic on the policy and the policy framework around RAPs. We'll be looking at data collection processes in RAPs. Valuation, I see someone is asking about matters valuation. So we'll have a valuer on board when we'll cover valuation 1 and 2, just to make it very clear for us. We'll have stakeholder mapping, engagement of PAP. Mary has mentioned something about grievances and redress mechanisms. So we'll be also talking about that. Specifically on gender matters in RAP, which are very key to donors, and they want that highlighted. So we will also be having a session on gender. And then we also want us to know what is the actual RAP structure, what's the report outline. So to go with that, we'll have a practical case of a project, and we can already feel that Mary has a lot of experience in this area. So she'll be walking us through a practical case that she has undertaken, and we'll want to know what were the components of the project, and basically run through a report, as it were, and be able to understand and get that skill to be able to undertake this. So we have multiple facilitators. One is our very own facilitator of the day, Ms. Randiki, who is a senior consultant, as I mentioned. We also have Justin Miner, who works with the World Bank. He will be handling matters livelihoods. We also have Nicholas Kimandhi, who is a valuer and an advocate of the High Court, will be handling the session on valuation. And then we also have Gladys Juma, a senior sociologist with the World Bank, handling matters gender, handling matters stakeholder engagement too. Then we have Dr. Elizabeth Gombi, a gender expert, specifically handling the gender aspect. And then we have Dr. Amos Wanyoike from the Kenya National Commission on Human Rights, taking us through the human rights approach to RAPs. And then, of course, we will be able to have a rich engagement on that. So we are inviting us to register for the course. We have quite a number of people who have already enrolled. I think our number is at 30. So we welcome you to join in, talk to our admin with regard to payments. I know some of you have requested that we stagger the payments. So please talk to admin on the same, and let's have this engagement. For now, I want to open this for question and answer, and I see we already have hands up. I want to invite Godwin.
Thank you very much, Purity, and I want to congratulate Mary for trying to offer a crash course. Mary, that was good. I think fundamentally, I know we'll have training coming up for this, but fundamental thing about the RAP process, the EIA, and also the designs, and this is where sometimes you get it wrong, is that these processes, they are not disjointed, they're integrative. The RAP should inform the design should inform the RAP, EIA should inform the RAP, EIA should inform the design. I mean, it's back and forth. And so sometimes when you're at the advisory level, it's very important to, I think this will be captured later on in the training, to advise your clients so that you are able to conduct this process in an integrative manner. Because sometimes some other costs that escalates in the RAP process is because they didn't take this approach. That's what I just wanted to comment. And also, I think also to be handled later on, the abuse of the RAP process. The RAP process can be seriously abused, and so there should be some stopgap measures now to deal with it. Thank you, Purity. That's what I wanted to comment. Otherwise, Mary did a good job.
Thank you, Dr. Pinde. Well appreciated. So Mary, you may comment on that, but meanwhile, let me read a few comments from the chat. We have Dominic, who is asking about valuation. How is graves and cultural sites like shrines, circumcision sites compensated during RAP? How is valuation for the above calculated? Jack Odede is asking, is there a timeline for RAP to expire? Do we have such preset timelines? And then Benson Marsha, we will of course share our slides, and yeah, I think that's what we have for now. And then Richard, you can ask your question, then Mary will respond to those. Welcome, Richard. Richard, you're muted. But if the hand was raised accidentally, I think Mary, you can respond to those queries.
All right. Thank you all for those good questions. I'll start off with Godwin. Absolutely, I agree with you. All these studies, whether it's EIA and the project design and everything, they're all interlinked, because one should feed to the other, and it's like a vicious cycle. Most of the time, I know the RAP projects, RAP activities I've done, we normally do it even together with EAI, and it's not the end. You'd find yourself even having going back to the field to address certain issues later on, and all that information is fed back to the design. Whether there's an engineer in charge or whoever who is whatever, he needs to get that feedback. Yeah, and having frequent meetings with them is very important, so that they understand and interpret to them what is coming out from EIA, what is coming out from the RAP, and what does that mean? Yeah, and the reason why these meetings are also very important is so that we understand also their design. Why do they? Because we, especially when you're doing RAP, you need to do a lot of explanation at the ground when you're dealing with PAPs, and it will be a story that you'll repeat like 1,000 times, yeah, before people even catch up with you. So having that discussion with the engineer and working closely with them. Sometimes when it's tough to actually discuss the design, when you're having public participation, I don't go alone. I invite the environmentalists, I invite the engineers, I invite the valuers, I invite everyone, so that we are a team. Yeah, so that at the end of the day, we stand in one position, so that we are not caught off guard. And yet again, I agree with you, Godwin. RAP is, people can abuse RAP, and I've seen it many times. And it can come even from, not only from the side of the planner, but also from the PAP. PAPs always try to get, what can I say? They want to get the maximum they can get from this compensation, or from the entire process. They can even call you on the side and tell you, by the way, why don't you change my things so that it's exaggerated, so that instead of saying that I have 1 tree, indicate I have 100 trees. So it calls upon integrity. Yeah, we need to know what we're doing. And if you understand the whole process, and you understand that later on somebody else will come in and also check what you've done and RAP, then you would not fall prey to such such luring suggestions. The other abuse would be, in any RAP situation also, you'd find that there are many people who are interested in the project itself. And some of the culprits are politicians. They want to ride on it. And I know they're always keen on the RAP process. Yeah. Some of them might turn out to mean like as if they are really speaking on behalf of his people, but in essence, he's trying to gather enough information for his own use, or so that he can be able to also take that credit that he's the one who brought the project, and he's the one who made sure that the payment was done and all that. So yes, there are abuses from all quarters. Yeah, and I like the money, and I'm sure in any project there should be one checking the other somehow. Yeah, so that this can be minimized. There's a question around graves, compensation for graves and cultural sites. This is usually a tricky one, and yes, they must be compensated for. Cultural sites are usually communal land or communal sites. So this needs a discussion with the community, especially the elders, and they'll give you direction on how to what they expect. Because you'd find that for a cultural site to even be moved, they'll tell you all the traditions, or what needs to be followed, or what they need to do, and how much it would cost for them to actually accept to move it. Yeah, they would need some kind of ceremony, or they'll need some, I don't know, many other things, and that would involve some amount. So I cannot tell you offhand how much it is, because it's different from different communities, and it's something that people discuss and come to an agreement with. Graves, very important. It's a very passionate thing, and most people usually don't want their loved ones moved. But you need to tread around that issue very carefully, discuss with the family, let them know why it's important, and ask them what they need, and give them time to think about it. Yeah, and that would mean exhuming the bones of the body would be compensated for. Yeah. Some would need some of the ceremonies they have, or they'll have some sort of prayers or some ceremony for that thing to happen. So it needs to be catered by the RAP. And yeah, and ensuring wherever the remains will be buried, that cost is also taken care of, and the transport. So that is again an agreement with the family. And I'm sure if there are several households within the project area, it would be advisable to hear from the families and have a standardized amount. Otherwise, if you give one more than the other, it will bring problems. Yeah, it will bring problems. And of course, always ensure that when you're talking to the families, also ensure that there are elders around. The chief is also there, so that everything is very clear, because these are very sensitive matters. But indeed, they do happen. There's a study, I think, still in Gatundu, that there were several graves, and those had to be relocated. But also, and this speaks to what Godwin was asking about, everybody working together, even plus the engineers. There was a grave that was going to be affected, and after a discussion with the engineer, they found a way to slightly move the boundary of the project, so that the grave was not touched. So that is also possible. Calculation will be subject to discussion with the family members, and also with the relevant people, the elders and the chiefs together. There was a question on, is there a preset timeline for the RAP to expire? I don't think I've come across, but logically, if a RAP is done and the project takes more than 1 year to be implemented, surely there's been inflation. Things have changed. Yeah, because you've not compensated these people, chances are they'll continue with their lives. Yeah, so ideally, past 1 year, there needs to be a review of that RAP. Yeah, because probably you wanted to also compensate for, let's say, some of these seasonal crops, and 1 year is elapsed. You'll find that maybe they've harvested, so that those crops don't need to be harvested. You need to compensate the new crops that they are growing. If they harvested the trees, you do not need to do that. Yeah. So yeah, I reasonably, I think after 1 year, beyond 1 year, there's need to the whole RAP. It does not. I wouldn't call it expire, but you need to check the details as still as it was collected before, and what has changed. And then you go to the unit prices that you use and check on the market rates and see whether there's needs for change. That you can work together with the valuer to actually revise that. I think there were only 3 questions. Was there any that I missed out?
I think you have handled all of them, but there are more on the chat, and then we will give Kelly a chance to also ask his. But someone is asking, how can the integrity of the RAP process be guaranteed? What measures are in place to check any malpractices? And then Richard wants to know, how do you undertake compensation if a project is implemented on land that is communally owned? Tamakaro, Kelly, you have the floor.
My question to Mary is, how do we compensate such things like medicinal plants and traditional things like shrines and all that in such a process? I mean, there are some cultural attachments like the shrines, medicinal plants. How do we have any standard kind of way of compensating such a very complex issues like shrines or even graves?
Okay. Well noted. Cliff, you have the floor.
Thank you, Purity, and thank you, Mary. I don't have a question, but I would like to add that the cultural issues that we deal with or that are dealt with in Iraq are quite spread. And there's no concrete formula that can let you to know that a grave is compensated at this amount. And therefore, that's why aspects on community engagement and getting to really know the cultural context to which the project is being implemented are key for any expert or any implementer who's going to implement the RAP that has come on board. And therefore, the first thing is get to know really the contextual, the culture of fluidity and the context to which the project is being implemented. And the costing on maybe shrines and all that, there are people in every community who hold high offices as per the community structure, who then get to drive the whole discussion on what should happen. But you see, the spirit of a RAP is not compensation. The spirit of a RAP is to minimize impacts, is to, again, the normal hierarchy of mitigation applies in a RAP. The first thing is avoidance of involuntary resettlement and reduction of the impact to communities, to persons, and whichever that be. And therefore, if it be that the design has to be reconfigured or varied to avoid some impacts, then that is the best way. Compensation comes in as the last option of the whole picture. And therefore, as I said before, you have to know the contextual, the context of the culture. Then from the entry of the project, not even the resettlement action plan itself, there ought to be free, prior, informed consent, so that you have what you call a social license to operate, even when you are doing the RAP, so that the people really trust you on whatever you're doing. And therefore, I think that's what I will say. Then to add on something, I don't know if you can mean to add on something also, is that the word PAP does not mean landowners. The word PAP is collective. It involves even the members of a given household. That includes even a 5-month-old baby born to that family. That kid or baby is counted to be a PAP. And therefore, many experts tend to limit it to landowners. That's what I wanted to bring to attention. You have people who have different rights to given eligibilities, or the eligibilities are also quite fluid when you get to do these RAPs. And therefore, you have to ensure that you've documented all the eligibilities, and those that are affected in different ways then become PAPs. And therefore, they are household owners, they are landowners, they are tenants, and many others, depending on the context which you're looking at. Again, the RAPs are different. There are the RAPs that will lead to purchase of land, or what you call land tech, and there are RAPs that will also lead to acquisitions of some rights of passage, or what you call way leave, whereby you don't really need to buy that land off, but limit some uses of the rightful owner of the land to that land. Thank you.
Cliff, thank you for the insights. That was helpful. Mary.
Yeah, thank you so much, Cliff. At least you've answered some of the questions that were asked before. Yeah, truly, and just to add to what you said, truly, when it comes to cultural issues, they're different from one area to another. When you talk about relocating graves, in some communities, when you're dealing with an elder, it is very expensive, because an elder is somebody who's respected in the community, and so there's some cultural things they have to go through compared to a child. Yeah, so this varies between communities, and it's a discussion. And as Cliff has clearly said, there are people within the community that you can talk to, and most likely they're the elders within the community who will give you direction, what needs to be done, Pengine mbuzi must be slaughtered when dealing with the shrines or dealing with the movement of the grapes. Yeah, so Kelly, I guess you've been answered, but I think you had a question on how medicinal plants are compensated. What I know is that for crops and trees and all that, the government has some rates, yeah, whether it's indigenous or exotic. So I guess that would fall that depending with the type of plant it is, even if it's medicinal, it must have a name. And I'm sure within those rates, there's a place where it's placed. If I'm not wrong, Dr. Ari, I know you deal a lot with medicinal plants.
Yes, Mary, you're right.
Yeah. Okay. So issues of integrity and malpractices. Yeah, this is very key. And I guess that's why before anybody's contracted to do any job, there's a bit of, they just don't select anyone. You need to prove your capability to actually conduct a RAP or to work in that, and that goes beyond to see actually what other projects have you worked and what happened there. So that is the first step to know how whether you've had cases of malpractice or you had integrity issues. Other than that, let's not forget that within a project, there are different players. Yeah, there'll be the contractor, there'll be the client. I would believe even the supervising engineer would have their person. So all these people have their own social person or somebody who also will also be part of the RAP process, yeah, or overlook, or if you collect that data, they'll be able to check what you've done. So I think with all those layers, there's a level of ensuring to minimize these malpractices. Yeah, because don't forget, even communities are communities, and they don't keep quiet when they're disgruntled. And that when they're disgruntled, the end client or even the contractor will hear it very fast. And if it's an issue that is involving malpractice, it will also come out. Yeah, so having all these layers can help with reducing such integrity issues. Communal land, that's also a bit tricky. That's again, it's a discussion with the community. In Kenya, I know we don't have so many communal land. The people I know who always have communal land are like Maasai's, but they also have a structure. They have a structure, and it does not necessarily mean, as Cliff says, that it would mean that the land will be bought or anything like that. It could also means that there's some development that will be done, or a school will be built, or a road will be built, something that benefits the community. But again, these are matters that are discussed with the communities that are involved, because communal land could be even land that is sacred to them. So you can only get to know what needs to be done after having the discussions with the chief, with the elders, and also ensuring that there's a good representation. That means there's representation from women, because communal land is something that even women also use. So women should have a say, and also the elders, the men, and also have a say. And then of course there'll be a discussion around it and an agreement, and we come to an agreement on that. Let me see. Yeah, I think those were the only ones. I guess there's some on the chat. I'm not sure.
Yes, we can do a final round. Magdalene is asking, how do you deal with a case where a single or two families have refused to be relocated because of their family member's grave? Do you ignore them, or how do you take care of such? And then Jack is also asking that in a case where we have that communal setup and we have churches, also mosques, who gets to be compensated as opposed to individual tenants or individual buildings where owners are compensated? Cliff is also giving us some insights here. Members can also read the just compensation rules. And that is rules of 2017 that would help to know the bare minimums that qualify just and prompt as prescribed in the Land Act. Thank you, Cliff. What are the conditions from Kelly? What are the conditions of government compulsory land acquisitions on infrastructural and energy projects? And Rose is concerned about how fair government rates for compensating trees in different ecological zones, given that tree growing in water-stressed areas is more expensive. And then Okato says actually 70% of land in Kenya is communal, hence that's very critical. Cliff again has asked us to read the Community Land Act of 2016. And then on communal land, again, what happens when individuals lay claim to communal land and the county government, as the administrator has not created a trust account for the benefit of community members? Abraham had, yeah, I think this was what he was going to ask because I'd seen his hand up. So I think we can address that as a final round.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. Thank you again, Cliff. Those are very good references that that maybe it will be, I think, beneficial for some of us to actually have a read of them. I'll start with Magdalene's question on what happens when a single or two household members refuse to be moved. Yeah, it always happens, by the way, sometimes. Not only within the household members, but also you can find a whole household refusing to move. And I remember there was when the Kisumu highway was being built, there was a time I noticed when they had finished building it, there was always a house right under a bridge, right in the middle of the road. So I guess in my mind, I just guess some of this, some of the households that refused to move, and they were bypassed by the project. But I'm nowadays I don't see that house, so I think they must have realized it was a mistake to actually refuse. Having said that, the best thing that you can do, honestly, is try all corners to actually have a discussion with the members. Yeah, they might have an attachment to the land they have, because it could be ancestral land. It could be, probably there's so many of their relatives who are buried there. But it takes many people to have a talk to that household, the chiefs, the elders, and everyone. And you don't close that door until you've done the best that you can. When it comes to us, because don't forget, even the Constitution gives an allowance that any project that benefits the community can be taken. Yeah, and though, as Cliff says, really, RAP tries to minimize this impact. It's a very murky thing. Yeah, and I know sometimes people are taken to court, and there's a lot of discussions, and the discussions can take very long. It needs a lot of arbitrary discussions, you know, having somebody that can help you also to talk to these families. Yeah, because if it has to pass that little, somehow it will. Yeah, unless of course the engineer can look into it and see whether it's possible to bypass them. Yeah, it takes a bit of time, but some of these issues are resolved. I'm sure some of you know that the SGR, there's some still, I believe there's some court cases still in court from the SGR project. Yeah, I would not give you a straightforward question, but I think to avoid some of these things early enough is engaging, as I said earlier, engaging all the PAPs as early as possible. Yeah, working with them. Yeah, working with them and having a discussion with them whenever they need that talk to them. I know some of them would never give you that time of day, but if you're not able to go through them, use other quarters to get to them. Yeah, sometimes I know chiefs have helped. Sometimes even local MPs have helped when they're convinced that that project is actually needed. Yeah. So there's a way, and of course, I know most people sometimes even they refuse to move because they don't believe that the government will pay them, especially if it's a government project. And this I want to link to a question that was asked on how fair the government compensation. What I know is that the compensation should be at market rate. Yeah. The individual, the separate valuer will do his own valuation. Sometimes we encourage even the PAPs to do their own valuation so that we can compare the prices. And then at the end of the day, NLC will also come in and they will look at all this and all the what we have in the RAP in terms of compensation, and also have an agreement and discussion with the people. Yeah, I would say that recently there's been an improvement. I would say that there's been an improvement. Maybe there might be delays in the payment, but the rates have been better. What I've heard from people is the compensation for trees and crops. Some people find that those rates being low. So but this depends on, they're different for each project. Some projects, after discussion with the PAPs, yeah, those you might use those rates, or you might agree to slightly increase it, yeah, depending with the project. There's some projects that is possible, others it's not, yeah. But again, it all falls back on engagement, discussions, and trying to find a middle ground when it comes to these matters. Yeah. There's a question on the condition of land on something on energy. I didn't catch that. Could you please repeat that question, please?
Yes, Mary. So what are the government conditions on compulsory land acquisition for those type of projects?
I think that for me, when you talk about government, I would fall back on the legal framework. What is there that we have as provision when it comes to land acquisition? Yeah, what does the Constitution say? What does all the laws? And I'm sure there's a whole session that we'll have on the legal frameworks. Yeah, so they are there, and normally what is used to justify the kind of compensation that would be given to people. Yeah. From what I know, from what I see, when I look, the law, actually the laws that we have in Kenya are very good. Perhaps maybe the only issue that we might have is in the implementation. But we do have good laws that govern land acquisition or any other matter in Kenya. So what we'll do is when we are discussing when we are discussing the legal framework, we'll have a look at some of those laws and see how fair they are, or what you think, or what your take is in that, and we'll have conversation around that, and then you'll be the judge to see whether those laws are fair or not. Daktari?
Oh, yes. So I think even this one for Abraham fits in there. There was something I was asking about communal land in the event that the county government has not created a trust. So meanwhile, we can take the last comment from Cliff. And Cliff, you can also add your insights.
Maybe just to add, sorry, Purity, maybe just to add to that, I think
Yes, yes,
on
Mary.
communal land. Yeah, if that trust has not been created, one thing about we also come across situations where people don't even have title deeds for their land. And to speeding up things, they normally get even support on that. So if there's no trust, I'm sure something can be worked out to create it. Yeah. So there's always provision to ensure that where the PAPs need help or support, they get it, or advice on how to go about it.
Thank you. Cliff, you have 2 minutes.
Okay, thank you, Pirit. I would like to weigh in on the question asked. Is that most government projects are gotten on concessional loans from international finance institutions, and with these international finance institutions, they leverage on the kind of practice that happens on the ground, because they also have to protect their image, even with the advancement and progression of ESG. And therefore, there is a lot that they get to do. There's a lot of due diligence that they get to do to ensure that everything has been done in a prompt and fairly manner on matters compensation. And therefore, there's always a comparison depending on the project between the legal framework that is in the country and the international best practice, and where it's deemed that the legal practice then is a little weaker, then the international best practice takes precedence in such matters. And therefore I will say, as Mary said, and many times, but there could be some changes that we are beginning to see in a few, like a year ago or something. Many times compensation dues are from the exchequer, and we know the exchequer money comes in bits and it's been piecemeal. But we've had projects where we have these international finance institutions, they have now begun to even finance compensation. But there's a lot of due diligence so that we don't have project delays as a result of grievances that stem from the ground. If there are absentee landlords, the Land Act provides for the owner of the project would deposit the compensation dues in an interest earning account, what you call an escrow account, up to the point when land disputes are resolved or the landowner is available. For the Community Land Act, as I said before, is that for unregistered community land, and most of the land that we have in Kenya is community land, if you're unregistered, then the law provides that the county is paid in trust of the community that is affected. But we have situations whereby the community has gotten into an agreement with the county and even the developer, and community projects that get to benefit the wider community are developed in lieu of compensation. But if, of course, it's registered, then they have an account and they have a name and all that, then they have all the rights then to be compensated. I think those are my contributions into that. Thank you.
Oh, great. And thank you, Cliff. You and Mary make such good trainers. So thank you, members, for joining us. Mary, many thanks for your insightful training, and we enjoyed. Of course, we really enjoyed the training, and we could flow, and you gave us practical cases that were relatable, and I think that's what members are looking out for. We are past the theory, being trained on theories, and we could really connect with you on your practical cases. So we want to invite members. Let's register for this training that is coming up on 9th. We don't want anything to come in between you and being a RAP expert or being able to undertake training. We've heard from Mary and of course our colleague Godwin telling us that EIA and RAP are highly interrelated. So we don't want to have you being an expert on EIA only. And then when issues or opportunities of RAP come in, then you have to look for other experts. And of course, they are not as many. The likes of Cliff and Mary are very few, and they would want to charge us an arm and a leg. So we want to be also experts in that area. So do not allow this 9,000 to come in between you and getting your next job. So let's get in touch with our admin and of course make arrangements on how we can stagger payments and all those issues that you have that you would want to be addressed. Let's have you taken care of, and I'm sure we will deliver to your expectation. We'll also have a project to go with it so that we all understand what is the structure and how to actually deliver on a wrap, sorry, in terms of report writing and all those questions that we still have, given that this was very short and but I think it was a good eye opener. Kindly we welcome us to engage and let us all register and work together. So thank you so much for joining. We highly appreciate your time and your commitment to our trainings. We value that. Thank you so much.
Thank you all. Have a wonderful evening.
Thank you.
Thank you. You too.
Great, thank you. Ruth, you
Thank
have
you.
something? Ruth and Amon, as people are leaving, we can still continue
It was
engaging.
accidental. I
Bye-bye.
actually wanted to clap.
No worries.
Okay.
Okay, okay.
Hello, Daktari. Are you still there?
Yes,
Dr.
Ruth.
Trinity.
Yes, Ruth, I'm here.
I'm just concerned if this thing will be repeated.